Hello friends, my name is Sonia. This is Sonia with an I. Welcome to my channel. Today I am bringing you a read along with me vlog, and I will be reading The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. There went my bookmark. This is the very first in the Bridgerton series. I have never read a Julia Quinn. I am not a big romance reader. If you know me, you know that. But I found myself really enjoying this series on Netflix. And I thought, you know, I am such a read the book. If you're watching the movie, read the book girl. So here I am doing that. So my dearest gentle readers, we will be reading and giving feedback on this lovely book. Please join me. Now, just so you know, before we get started, this vlog will be very spoilery. I plan to give very detailed, very, I was going to say dramatic, not me, I'm never dramatic, but very detailed, very honest feedback about this book. I don't plan to be ugly or mean or anything, but I do plan to be honest as I'm reading this and just giving you my thoughts. So if you have not read this or you don't want to know what's going to happen or any of those things, then, you know, pause this, go read the book, and then come join me, okay? All right. I am 3 chapters in, and in the prologue. First of all, could Simon's name be any longer? I mean, what kind of name is... Hold your mule, I gotta find it. All right, Simon Arthur Henry Fitzranulph Bassett Earl Clivedon. That is a name. I feel sorry for that kid in kindergarten. Anyway, beyond the point. The beginning, the prologue, is all about how Simon is born, how his dad, the Duke, was wanting a son. They couldn't conceive. The wife had lost so many children. The woman's duty in childbearing and not really marrying for love, but marrying because it's the duty of the woman to produce children. Papa Duke is a jerk. He basically just wants the brooding mare to produce the foal, and, you know. So the child's mom is older. They've tried to have children many times. She's lost them. And this child lives, but it is her last. She passes. And Simon is the name of the child, and Simon is growing up, but he is lacking language skills. And I'm sorry about this reflection. He is lacking language skills pretty badly. And he doesn't say anything until he's 4. And then his father decides that he's going to beat him to get him to speak. And the nurse takes up for him. And he says, stop and don't. And he finally speaks, but he has a severe stutter. And the father calls him an idiot and tells him to get out of his face, that he, you know, what did he do to God? He doesn't deserve to have an idiot for a son. He's too well-bred, blah, blah, blah. So the nurse basically raises him. Now, what I noticed, and there's probably going to be a lot of this kind of speak, is that in the Bridgerton series, it was Lady Danbury who stood up for him. So it was, you know, a nurse, but he does mention eventually Lady Danbury being kind to him. So basically this is building empathy for Simon and trying to get Simon's point of view and understanding of his view of having children, I'm assuming, but this is what I see coming. Chapter 1, first of all, I cannot read The Lady Whistle Down without hearing Julie Andrews' voice, which I love. So that is not a problem. Daphne is been out to be married. You know, they come out to announce that they're ready for marriage for 2 years. And her mother, Violet, is getting very frustrated with her because it's been 2 years and she should get married. And Daphne is complaining because the guys who want to marry her are either too old or too dumb. And the guys that she's interested in are not interested in her because she's too normal. She's not a striking beauty, which surprises me because on Bridgerton, the gal is gorgeous. But she's not striking. She's just this normal girl. And they Violet and Daphne, Violet is their mother, are talking about Lady Whistledown's start as well. And I mean, they're spilling the tea on Lady Whistledown, which I absolutely love. I love the Lady Whistledown aspect, which is so funny because I am not a gossipy person. I don't care for gossip. To me, small minds talk about other people, big minds collaborate with other people. But I don't know. I just find it interesting. And maybe it's because it's like ridiculous people being gossiped about. I don't know. Anyway, Daphne is the relationship between Violet and Daphne is very sweet. They're like kind of picking on each other. You know, Violet is telling her, oh, "I'm just exhausted trying to get you married," and Daphne's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I am such a bad daughter, and that but you love me," and it's very sweet. There's 8 children in the Bridgerton household, and Daphne is the oldest daughter. Anthony is the oldest son, and Anthony has been helping Daphne to avoid these bad marriages or avoid these proposals, because apparently, as the man of the house, because Daphne and Anthony's father passed away, as man of the house, Anthony, even though he isn't married, and mother is not happy about that either, can pick Daphne's suitor or tell her, that she will marry whomever, which I find interesting. So, there's also chapter 1 moves on about the relationship. Her brother Anthony and Simon are friends from school. They went to school together. And who knew they did swirlies back in the Victorian day? If you don't know what a swirly is, it's when your head gets put in a commode. And apparently Anthony did that to Simon in college at uni. So, anyway, they're all talking about Lady Danbury's party, Anthony and Simon, and then Daphne was talking to her mother about it, and they're all going to go to this ball. So chapter 2 is Lady Danbury's ball, and the brothers and Daphne are all complaining and talking about how the brothers are talking about how all the single ladies are like vultures and trying to get them to, propose, like in the desperate, like the dragon moms are trying to get the Bridgerton boys to marry up their daughters, and Daphne is trying to avoid Nigel, who has proposed to her multiple times and she is not interested in him. And so they're all kind of in a corner convening and trying to avoid this. In walks Simon. Now, Simon is not seen until Daphne gets cornered in a hallway by Nigel, and Nigel is forcing himself on her, not for any sort of assault, but just because to get her to marry him. And she's told him she's not interested, and he said, well, you have to marry me. I love you. You're the only person who smiles at me. And she's like, I'm not interested. There's plenty of other ladies you can marry. He gets a little rambunctious with her, and Simon steps in, and he's the hero. And as Simon steps up, Daphne gives him a right hook, hits him pretty hard, and Simon thinks it's hysterical and laughs, and that's where the chapter's ended. So a lot of similarities to the TV show, and this is a pretty fast read. Like, I'm enjoying this. I've sat, I read it didn't take any breaks or anything. So good gravy. This is the longest ball ever. We're still at the ball. It's chapter 3. Tallness seems to be very important here. They're in the hallway. What's his biscuit got knocked? Nigel. Nigel is still out. But he's muttering things and calling and saying laughy, laughy. And Simon thinks that this is funny and is joking with Daphne because he doesn't realize her name is Daphne. And so he calls her laughy. And then Simon is admiring Daphne and how beautiful she is. And he's wanting to kiss her, but he's never kissed an innocent before. I don't really get that, but okay. And he makes a plan to send Nigel home. And then he realizes that her name is Daphne, and realizes that Daphne is Bridgerton and Anthony's sister. So with that, he goes through the whole knowing Anthony and doing all that. And she explains to him that everyone knew he was coming because it was in Lady Whistledown's papers. She's explaining Whistledown. Then he gets roguish with her, like, I'm so BA, like dudes do. It's impressive, apparently. He's like trying to be like seducing her, and she's like, he was like telling her he was dangerous and that she should be afraid. And then she like bullfaced like laughed in his face, and he's hurt. He's like, you know, all but her about it. And she's like, baby, I got brothers. That game doesn't work with me. So totally calls him out. They have a playful quarrel. He enjoys her and thinks that if she were a man, they would be friends. And Simon starts to take Nigel away. Nigel wakes up. He attacks Daphne again, knocks her in the wall. Simon knocks him out completely. They decide to leave him. Then chapter 4 is back to the ballroom, and Nigel walks to the ballroom, was trying to slip out, and then everybody notices who he is. And Mrs. Featherington comes over and introduces her daughters, and she's a hot mess. Like, they're all going gaga over Duke. And he says something about, she says something about her 3 daughters, and she has one at home named Felicity. Since when is there a younger sister? I don't remember that from, that isn't in the movie. And then she mentions her husband's dead, which aren't in the show either. So that was different. He was like, he makes a comment about her being pudgy and unattractive, and that the color that she's wearing is not right for her body type or whatever. So I've noticed this in the series, that they do a lot of mention of bad colors on Penelope, like they put her in yellows and orange, and it's supposed to not be flattering. I think she's darling, but I mean, what do I know? And they decide to leave what's his biscuit, Nigel. I can't remember the name. It's very English. You think I should remember this name? I'm not remembering this name. So they leave him propped up in the hallway, and they did that. Sorry, I'm out of whack. They left him propped in the hallway in the 3rd. They're in the actual ballroom in the 4th chapter, and then the boys come over and start talking to Simon. Anthony introduces Simon to the brothers, and then Simon lets it slip that he had met Daphne in the hallway just briefly. So they decide they're going to push Simon over to Daphne, because Daphne's mom is trying to fix her with this other guy, and he's just miserable, and you can tell. They save Daphne, and they all meet and have kind of this awkward whatever, and then the Mrs. Featherington heads over that way, and Simon decides that's the time to ask her to dance. Not Featherington, but Daphne. So on to chapter 5. So chapter 4, we're still at the ball, because this is the longest ball ever. And everybody is like gaga over the Duke, and he's trying to like sneak around and just go say hi to Lady Danbury and sneak out. Well, that doesn't happen. Mrs. Featherington comes over to introduce all of her daughters, and Penelope is in there, so yay, entrance of Penelope. Penelope's my favorite character, so yay, Penelope. And then Lady Featherington mentions Felicity, a 10-year-old named Felicity. She's not in the Netflix show, but whatever. We progress. And the husband's dead, which wasn't, but whatever. Anyway, he explains that Penelope is really the only one that's a little bit likable, but she's pudgy and she's unattractive, and she's in a really bad color dress, which I noticed they mention the color of dress quite a bit too. So every time they mention Featheringtons, they mention ugly colors. And the Featheringtons go away. The Bridgerton boys walk over. Anthony introduces Simon to his brothers. They see Daphne struggling because the mom is like pushing this man onto Daphne, and he is not interested. She is not interested. They decide to go rescue Daphne. Simon lets it slip that Daphne and he had met, but just briefly, accidentally. So they officially meet, and then Violet's eyes light up because he's a duke, and she's trying to introduce Daphne, and really wanting to put them together, and he's like going, kind of getting that whole hold up. But he turns around and looks, and Mrs. Featherington is on the way, and he decides that that's the time for he and Daphne to dance. So on to chapter 5. We're still at the ball. So I'm a little over 100 pages in, so I thought this would be a good time just for my thoughts. I see a lot of similarities in the show with the book, which I enjoy. Of course, there are nuances of the times that I don't love, but you have that going into Regency, so I know, like the female's job and all that sort of nonsense. I really like the brothers, like how they kind of pick and tease, and I really like them. I like Daphne. Actually, I like the Bridgertons, and they all seem like they're just close knit, lovely family. Simon has some demons. You can tell he's that typical like dark love interest who's the kind of the bad boy with the scarred soul sort of thing. You can tell he really harbors ill feelings due to his father. Like he ran away when his father wanted to get closer to him because his father was so awful to him. So there's a lot of empathy for him, but I also kind of see where that can become a problem later on in the story. So everything is kind of, it's coming together kind of as your sort of typical romance. I mean, you have the person that she's not interested in. You have that little spark that they got when when they first met. And of course there's a situation in which she needs help and he's there to rescue. Very, very romance story. Am I enjoying it? Yeah, I am. And I really think, honestly, if I think I went into this blind and didn't watch the show before, I still think I would be enjoying it. Maybe not as much because, I kind of squeed when it was Penelope's turn to bat because, like I said, she's my favorite character. So, and Colin, I like Colin as well. It's an interesting read. Like I said, I can hear the music for the ball in my head, as I'm reading it, which is kind of nice. I'm not hating it. I'm enjoying it. There's not been any sort of dipsy doodle or anything like that. Like it's very prim and proper.
So I've read chapters, I can't really talk, chapters 6, 7, and 8. And so they have decided to do this fake dating. And the first part of the fake dating starts off as Simon is coming to call or court Daphne at her home, and he goes there and she is being met by several suitors. He has tulips, and apparently tulips are very expensive, and he finds himself getting very like rooster in the hen house kind of mad. Like he doesn't want any of the roosters in the house. And he doesn't quite understand that because, he knows this is a farce, and this was kind of the goal, is for her to get other suitors. So he waits his turn, and, he fluffs out his feathers, and all the other guys get really intimidating because he's the Duke. And Violet comes in, and Violet kind of shoos everybody out because he's the Duke. And he greets Daphne, and Daphne kind of ignores him at first and is kind of paying more attention to the other suitors. But when the suitors leave, she starts to talk to him, and they have this witty banter, and he brings tulips and tells him they're for Violet, for the mother, and Violet just gushes, and Violet is already absolutely in love with him and so taken with him, even though she, told her daughter at the beginning that he was a rake. And so that happens. Anthony comes storming in. He's mad. He doesn't, what are you doing, my sister? You're, I know what you do. I know what kind of man you are. Because apparently, Anthony doesn't want, it's okay for him to use everybody else's sister, but don't do anything with his sister. You know how that is. So Anthony wants to talk to Simon in private. They go to his office, and Daphne goes with them, and then Daphne and Simon decide to kind of let Anthony in on what's going on. And he doesn't like it at first. He throws some chicken fits, but then he decides, okay, but don't you dare touch my sister. You can't be alone with her. If you are, I'll kill you, that sort of thing. The whole brutish man baloney. And so Anthony afterwards is arguing with his mom and saying, how can you want this? He's a rake. And she's like, well, a reformed rakes make the best husbands. And he's like, you don't believe that. And she's like, well, you're a rake and I love you. Anyway, Anthony is totally against this. Violet is totally pushing this. So as Anthony is kind of arguing with Simon, Simon says, well, I guess I'm not invited to dinner like you invited me at the ball. And he's like, well, no, I resend the invitation. And Daphne's like, well, absolutely not. You're coming to the ball, or coming to our house for dinner. So through all of this drama, Simon is observing Daphne. And he's having some naughty thoughts. It's like Baby Spice naughty, but it's naughty. And he's really wanting to get to know, and he keeps noting to himself that he's smiling and laughing and enjoying himself. And he has said that she would be his friend if she was male. And he's really enjoying her. And she thinks that she doesn't get dates, or she doesn't have anybody wanting to marry her because she's kind of friend zoned. She's raised by boys. She's gotten friend zoned because, she knows boys and how they play. And, well, not raised by boys, but she's raised with boys. So, and I get that. I had 9 boy cousins. I totally get that. I totally get the friend zone things. Actually, I see a lot of me and Daphne, which that shocks me, but it's true. So he decides he's coming to dinner. And he comes to dinner, and it is not formal. It is a family dinner, even though Violet is not pleased with this. Violet wanted to make it, formal because it's the Duke. So they have this dinner, and he finds himself just having a ball. And he is not used to having family. He was raised without family. And I totally get the dinner scene, and I loved it because, they're being a family. And I have a good friend, Anne, who has 6 kids, and I went to dinner at her house one time, and it reminded me a lot of the Bridgerton house. I'm technically an only child. It was my grandma and I. And I would have been fascinated by that too. And he's finding that he really loves it and he enjoys it. So he's still on the, I'm not getting married, I'm not having children because I want revenge on my father. And she's still, I want to get married and want to have children. So this is never going to work. But he finds himself liking her more and more. Well, at the end of the dinner, Violet says, we're going to go take a turn out in the country at this exclusive place that we have a membership. Why don't you come along? And both Daphne and Anthony are like, no. And Simon had already told Violet that he didn't have anything to do the next day. So he accepts the invitation, and that's where I've ended. So I am at chapter 8, and they are out on the outing with all the Bridgertons on this boat, and Simon is really kind of feeling part of the family. They're really enjoying each other's company, and telling things about themselves, like she's not good at math and he loves math, and they're talking about he's giving her a nautical lesson, and he's also Hyacinth comes over and asks him some questions, and he kind of teaches her, and Daphne is observing this and getting those, oh, he would be a good father kind of vibes. And she's realizing this. Well, the boat has docked, and the younger son is messing around, and Simon's afraid he's going to get hurt, and he goes near the dock to make sure he's not, and Anthony's on the other side, and Anthony and Simon end up falling in the water together, and Anthony is upset with him, and they kind of argue a little bit. And they just have this lovely day. And then chapter 9 starts, and let the pining begin. So Daphne goes to this ball by herself, and this friend of the Duke's dad is there and talking about, asking about the Duke. Like, everybody's asking about the Duke and why he isn't there. And he ends up showing up because he's bored. And the daddy Duke comes up to Simon, and Simon's not interested in talking to him, and offers him these letters that his father had left with this other Duke to give to Simon. And Simon says, burn them, and Daphne says, not. And Simon storms off, and the man says, hey, would you keep the letters? And she feels kind of weird about that, but she finally agrees to. She follows him out in the garden, or she follows him outside. And then she decides that she's going to go in the garden. She's being kind of sassy and flippant and all this about it. And he's telling her, no, don't. and he won't let her go in the garden by themselves. So they end up being in the garden by themselves. And chapter 10 starts. He goes in the garden, she goes after him, and they end up, getting very almost like I'm gonna kiss, and then she backs up a little bit. They're in the garden together. He backs up a little bit, and she kind of goes to him. I mean, she goes for it, and they end up kissing, and then the kissing ends up to being pretty heavy, and she ends up, I guess her bosoms fall out of her shirt or out of her dress or something, and he's hot. His pants are on fire, and Anthony finds them, and Anthony runs after him. Anthony beats the devil out of him, tells them, they're going to have to duel, and Daphne is like standing in front of him and telling him no, telling him absolutely not, and he's apologizing a million times and telling her that if he would marry anyone, it would be her. He just took a vow he absolutely can't marry, and she's like, well, it's pretty bad that you would choose death over marrying me. And anyway, they just, this big dramatic thing. She ends up falling in brambles. Simon gets her out. Anthony gets her covered, and she goes home and nurses her wounds, and Simon says he's leaving. We are now at chapter 11. I apologize, the lighting in here is not real great. I'm kind of looking hot mess, but I'm baking some bread and making casserole for a friend of mine who's had a death in the family. So I'm kind of trying to do 2 birds, 1 stone here. So I say that a lot. Anyway, chapter 11. Daphne is worried about the duel. She can't sleep. She doesn't sleep. She has to stop it, so she seeks Colin's advice. Colin says no at first, but then decides to help Simon and says that, or help Daphne. He also says that his friend Hastings saw Simon and Daphne in the garden alone together, which is an oxymoron because you can't be alone together, but whatever. So, in Simon's point of view, Simon is nothing but all about the revenge on his father. He's not marrying Daphne. He can't marry Daphne because he is revenge minded. He can't have children, and he knows she wants to have children, so he can't do that for her. But Daphne runs to the duel, and they argue and fuss and fight. But then she's like, I'll give all of this up because I don't want you to die. I too care too much about you. He says the same. He can't believe she's willing to give it up, but then he agrees to marry her. And she actually even punches him in the eye to try to get him out of the duel, and that doesn't work. So finally they decide they're going to get married. And chapter 12, Simon agrees to marry her. He tells her he can't have children, that she'll have to give that up. She says she's fine with that, and wedding plans start. They're both happy about getting married because they really enjoy each other and they like each other. And I do like the fact that the relationship is really based on friendship and not just because their pants are on fire. So I enjoy that part. But Anthony makes all kinds of threats afterwards. They eventually go to bed, not together, but separately, exhausted because neither one of them have slept since the garden incident and the kiss, and they're getting married. So chapter 13 is the marriage plans. Simon brings her this ring. It's a beautiful emerald ring, and he tells her that he chose that specially for her because it reminded of her eyes, and she laughed and said, well, my eyes are brown. And he's like, well, you have green. And she notices too, and she's so touched, and she thinks this is great. And he gives her the ring. He goes back home because he needs to see his betrothed. And the night before the wedding, Violet comes in to give Daphne the talk. And thus far, this has been my favorite part of the book. I laughed out loud. One, for many reasons, because it's sad, but it's very sad. And I know it's probably pretty true of the time that, the whole marital duty and the man will know what to do and just trust him, and the whole the lack of knowledge of the reproductive system and your own sexuality and all these things. It saddens me. But Violet's explanation of the act, the honeymoon, hysterical.
It was cracking up. And she, like, Daphne has no clue how any of it works and still does not. So I'm at the part to where it is, I will be starting chapter 14. I am over halfway finished with the book, so I am very much enjoying it. And chapter 14 will be the wedding and the honeymoon. We'll see how it goes. Well, it's chapter 14, and I'm coming. I should be sleeping. Yeah. So chapter 14 is the honeymoon. It's they're journeying to where his place is, and like she's completely clueless. Like she is all in a dither about what's going to happen on her wedding night. He's being weird, kind of in the carriage, like pretending to sleep and not really talking to her, because he wants to have her first time be someplace, you know, in the cast or wherever he's from. Shivon, I believe is what it's called. Clividon, whatever it is, Clividon. And she finally says, you know, it's a long drive. They decide to go to an inn. He wants to get separate rooms. There's not separate rooms, there's just one. So they decide to stay in one room, and she tells him that she understands that he can't perform, and he thinks this is hysterical and a little bit is offended, and that gets all ironed out. Like she's completely ignorant of the whole act of anything that's going to happen. And he kind of, I think he relishes in that a little bit. In chapter 15, it gets kind of, you know, it gets pretty steamy at the end. He's all broody about his childhood and about the childhood trauma. So they do some steaminess, and then his childhood trauma comes back with his dad and the whole child thing and what he's going to do and all of that. And she just is like absolutely clueless, like doesn't know like what parts go where or anything like that. So they end up, you know, doing the deed basically, and it's just this wonderful, incredible both of them experience for both of them, even though she's never done it before. But they have a lot of that. They finally get to Clividon, and they spend basically a fortnight just, you know, fornicating for a fortnight. So he is she starts to learn a lot about the house. She gets to know the housekeeper. The housekeeper basically spills the tea about how horrible her father was, and all, you know, the fact that his father called him an idiot, and she's learning all about Simon's trauma. They are intimate again, and she tells him she loves him, which they've been together for a fortnight, and that's the first time the I love you has came out. That's kind of weird, but whatever. And she realizes, she tells me, love, that get intimate, whatever. And after they get intimate, you know, he's taking precautions not to have children. And then she realizes that he's choosing not to have children, not that he can't have children. And they get into a big fight, and she accuses him of being a liar, and, you know, basically his revenge, he loves his revenge more than he loves her. So in chapter 17, she is just distraught and can't believe that he's allowing his hate for his father to keep her from having what she wants and keep them from loving each other. And she moves to another bedroom, and he's, you know, in a dither about it and yelling at the servants, and the servants tell him that she's moved to this bedroom. He demands to go back in to the bedroom, and she says no, and he throws hissy fits. She lets him in. He tries to seduce her. She says no, because it's never just the two of them. His father's always there too, and his father is dead, yet his father is always winning because he won't let himself go or let himself be fooled. Like everything that he does is in spite of his father, so his father is always winning. and he tells her that he owns her and that he can do whatever he wants. And she said, but you won't. And he leaves. Now I'm going to bed because it's really late. Chapter 18. Simon gets drunk, as one does when they're angry. He goes to her. They dipsy doodle, but I think it's really wrong she's been withholding, and I think it's really wrong to withhold love to get your way. Like, it's almost manipulatory. I mean, I can understand not wanting to, I don't know how to explain it without being really kind of, you know what I mean. Anyway, he gets drunk and she gets what she wants. She kind of takes advantage of him. So she, the way he's been preventing her from getting pregnant didn't work that time because she didn't allow that to happen. And I have thoughts about this. After she's finished, she immediately prays for a child, prays that it took, because it might be her only opportunity. And if your partner doesn't want something that desperately and badly, so much that he was willing to give up his life for it, and you take advantage of them when they're drunk, I have problems with that. That really bothers me quite a bit. So my phone keeps flipping for some reason. Sorry about that. Anyway, chapter 19, Simon leaves. He's upset. You took advantage of me. He goes, and he leaves. Like, he leaves the home. So Daphne goes to their London home, Hastings house, and she's just wrecked. She realizes that she's late and that her courses are late, and she sends Simon a message. Anthony comes in. Anthony asks what's going on. He throws chicken fits, and she makes Anthony promise he won't hurt him, but has him deliver a letter, and she tells Simon that she's pregnant because her courses are late. So she thinks she's pregnant. She takes his letter to Simon, gives the letter to Simon. Anthony makes a bunch of threats as he does. He's so prideful. When he left, he was more upset that he left because his stammering and speech impediment came back, because he was so upset about what was going to happen. Like, he felt very betrayed. So he's very embarrassed that Daphne has this power over him to bring him back to that childhood disability that he had. So he's mad. She goes to London. She's in London. She tells him, I'm pregnant. He gets on a horse and goes to London. Chapter 20. He gets to London and she's riding a horse, and he's baffled that she's doing this because she's pregnant and it's unsafe. And as he is approaching her, she gets hit by a limb and falls off the horse. He rushes to her. He's like, how can you do this? You're pregnant. This is so irresponsible. And she's like, you didn't want a baby anyway. Why does it matter? And he's like, I didn't want you to kill it. And she said, I'm not pregnant. My courses came. I don't know why. She's like, they've never been really super regular, but she goes, I guess I willed it. And she just like falls apart because she's not pregnant, because this is the only thing she wants. He tells her he wants her back. He apologizes for leaving. Daphne begs him to let go of his father. Now, I see this. I understand this. I don't understand, and maybe it's because I don't have children, and I wanted them a little bit, but not like she did. It just didn't work out for me. So I don't understand this whole obsession with having children. Because if your partner is so like willing to die for not being able to have them, and she married him knowing that he didn't want kids. So I don't understand the whole, like, she's willing to just kind of give up everything because of one thing. And I mean, eventually, not realizing that over time, feelings and thoughts change, but I digress. Anyway, I'm focusing a little bit too much on the taking advantage of. It does kind of bother me deep in my soul. Daphne begs him to let go of his hate, which he absolutely needs to, that his father's been limiting him all of his life, and that he has accomplished so much that he should be proud of, and that had nothing to do with his father. His father only gave him life. He tells her he just wants to be happy, and she tells him to learn to love, or they kind of mutually agree that he needs to learn how to hold on to love and let go of hate. So, which was pretty impactful. I think that I'm getting a little philosophical, but I think in life sometimes we do hang on to hate too much, and that doesn't allow for love to come in. So, chapter 21, the boys show up at Hastings' house, and they're all, feathers out, and they're ready to beat up Simon for making their sister unhappy. Daphne tells them they're a bunch of buffoons and to leave, and everything is okay. He finally tells her he loves her. Then her mom comes busting in the door and grabs the boys by the ear and gets rid of them, and they go upstairs and they do what they do quite a bit in this book. And he tells her he loves her multiple times. He realizes that, the only reason he wasn't asking himself what he wanted. He wanted he wanted not to have what his dad did want. So he was letting go of that. He decides that, he wants to be a father because he wants to make Daphne happy. And after they're finished doing multiple rounds of love showing, she finally, they're laying together on the love seat. She gets up and gives him his father's letters. He was like, I told you I wanted these burned. And she said, do you still want them burned? And he said, no, but I don't want to read them now. That, I have all of my life to read them. And, he just wants to be happy. And the book ends. That's the last chapter. Goes to epilogue. And it is the Lady Whistledown announcing they're having a boy after having 3 girls, the ABC children. So like Amelia, Belinda, there's a C name, and he's predicting that the name will be David, and it is David because it starts with a D. So he has a D name. And that's the end.
Well, the book is completed, and I have some thoughts. Of course I do. Firstly, I'll talk about the stuff I love. I adore and love the Lady Whistledown aspect of things. Like, there is a letter from Lady Whistledown at the beginning of every chapter, and I love that. What a ingenious way to do a summary of like background history and things like that in a fun way, instead of it being all pure dialogue or kind of just like a kind of boring narrative. Ingenious, so smart. Also, I really love the Bridgerton family. I love their dynamic. I love how they tease each other and they pick on each other, but they're there for each other. I love that. I really do. Multiple times, there were times that every one of her brothers was ready to go to war, and even some of it's kind of ridiculous and a little bit, alpha male, but I don't know. I love how dedicated they are. I will say, up to the first half of the book was 5 stars for me. I mean, yes, I know it's shocking that I would say that about romance, but it was 5 stars for me until the chapter with the taking advantage of your husband while he's intoxicated. I'm still having problems with that. The chapter where Daphne decides that she's going to have a baby come, heck or high water, and even though Simon has stated many, many times he didn't want to have children, he made it clear to her, he was willing to go to a duel and die because he did not want to have children. And she was like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. The way and there she does have remorse afterwards, but she still prays and hopes that she has a baby, that she's pregnant. And the way it was written in 2000, so I get there's been a lot of, there's been a lot of eyes open since then, at least I hope so. But the way it was written was, taking advantage of somebody who's impaired, which is a violation. But the way it was written, it was like they masked violation for female empowerment, and I just disagreed with that. It just kind of put a damper on my like of both Daphne and kind of my enjoyment of the story. So I did finish the rest of it. I did enjoy the rest of it. I just did not love that portion of the story. Now, something else that I didn't love as well was the they're constantly at it. You know what I mean, right? They're constantly at it. I get it, it's a romance story, but there was pages and pages and pages of it, and there's only, I don't know. I also don't really understand the rush for pregnancy. Like, why was she trying? They're young, they're in their 20s. Why did she have to get pregnant immediately? Like, get to know your husband, get to know your own body, get to know your, all of those things before you have to get pregnant immediately. And I'm sure that was just that's kind of a sign of the times as well. One of the parts that made me laugh out loud was Violet talking about marital relations. And even though it was sad, it did sadden me too, because I know that is a product of its time as well, that most women went into marriage not knowing anything about their own body or the reproductive system or any of that. It's saddening, but it was also quite humorous as well, because she was so flustered and so embarrassed. Now, some things that I noticed, I miss Penelope and Eloise. And because this story was just all about the Duke and Daphne, there was very little mentioned about any of the other ones. And I know that the television show has to do that, for interest and, engagement and whatever. But I did miss their part of the story because they're my favorite characters. I enjoyed the story. I did like many parts of it. I love how fast-paced it was. I thought that was incredible. It was engaging. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. I think that's my final review of it. I definitely want to read the next one. I'm not rushing to, but I definitely want to read it. I definitely want to read the Penelope story because, I adore her. But, yeah. Did I like the TV show better than the book? I think I like them equally. There's things about the television show that I don't care for. There's things about the book that I don't care for. And the things that I do like that are different, one or the other, I enjoyed it. So would I recommend this book to others? Yes. If you enjoy romance, Regency era, yes, absolutely. Spice level, I would say out of 5, I would give it a 3, maybe like Posh Spice. You're talking about Spice Girls. It's spicy as far as, I'd say more it's steamy than spicy. To me, spicy is like, using particular body part words and stuff. This was just steamy. There was a lot of relation in it. There was, descriptions of oohs and ahs and, all of that. The word mule, MEWL, I don't think I've ever heard of that word, and apparently it's a sound that women make. Who knew? I didn't know this. I'm a woman. Didn't know I made that sound, but whatever. I just thought that was kind of humorous too. Anyway, I did enjoy it. I would recommend it to others. If you do not like spice, if you like closed door relation, you probably would not enjoy this one because there's not any closed doors. The doors are wide open. So, yeah, thank you for coming along with me on my first time reading a Bridgerton book. And I'm glad that I did this. I really had a lot of fun. I really did enjoy the book. And I wanted to give this whole read along with me vlog a shot. So if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please do. If you have made it this far, you are definitely a real one, because boy howdy, this is a big one. put maybe the color blue, something the color blue, because the Bridgertons seem to be like icy blue people. So not like physically blue, but like their clothes and stuff are always blue. And thank you so much. Have the most amazing day. You make the world a better place just by being in it. And until next time, happy reading.